I introduced you. So
A little higher. Hey. Maybe. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm gonna have one more. I got to put this. Put me here. Put me something here. Put me some cushions.
another table?
Cushions. Hello. Cushions is okay. Hello, everyone. We're just setting up here everything so that I don't get lost during the teachings. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think as a start, it's probably okay. Let's see. Just give me a minute to settle in. Welcome, everybody. You already introduced me, right? Yeah. For those who don't know me, my name is Jamyang, Lhundup Jamyang, and originally I'm from the Netherlands, and I'm just passing through Delhi for a few weeks. So I'm having the honor to take care of the teachings on the Bodhisattva Charyavatara. And we're going to discuss and start with the 6th chapter. Do I need to say anything more before we start? I'll try to use the same format as Kabir normally uses. So we start with meditation, 15-20 minutes. Do we do the meditation before the meditation or after? Usually before the meditation. Okay, so maybe we do that as the first part of the meditation. So make sure that you sit comfortable, whether you are sitting on a chair or sitting on the floor, or maybe you are laying down, whatever is most comfortable for you. When the body is comfortable, the mind relaxes, and the mind can easily calm down. We use the sitting meditation on the cushion because it helps to focus the mind. And so that might be a little bit more difficult when you lay down or when you sit on the couch. But if you feel that that is the best position for your body, then just make sure that your focus becomes strong. Bring your mind to your body. When the mind is with the body, The mind is in the present moment because the body is always in the present moment.
No.
And when the mind is in the present moment, delusions such as attachment and anger, distraction, they cannot arise. So just let your mind rest on the body. If your mind is a bit distracted, it is okay to move around on the body. You don't have to stay at one place in the body. And then when the mind starts to calm down and has more ability to focus, you can bring your mind to your breath. And let the mind rest on the breath.
Oh.
And then we set up a good motivation for being here today. Listening to the teachings, reflecting on them, meditating on them. And so if we don't take time to set a good motivation, we follow our automatic motivation, which is that we all look for happiness, pleasure, and try to avoid discomfort and displeasure. So if that is our motivation for being here tonight, the only thing we are doing is creating more causes for suffering. To make our motivation a Dharma motivation, we have to make it a motivation that goes at least beyond this life.
Plus, this was, well, I was explaining. For such a high race as the British, sometimes even the level beauty and all that. I was told never. But one thing they are is on the plains.
By realizing that this life that we have at the moment, that is not permanent, it's not lasting. For each and every one of us, there's going to be a moment that we will leave this body behind. In 100 years max, every one of us has gone, has left the body. And so then it's the question, what's next? And just as we want to be happy in this life, we also want to be happy in all lifetimes. So try to think that you're listening now, tonight, to these teachings, not just to create the causes for happiness in this life, but also for the happiness of future lifetimes. And then we can extend that motivation by thinking, even if there are many happy future lifetimes, you know, the chance that I will engage, that I will meet suffering again is very big. And so I'm going to try to remove all the suffering in a way that it will never come back. And in order to do that, I need to set my mind on liberation from samsara. So not only do we want to have the happiness of this life, but also the happiness of future lives, and even the happiness of liberation. But if we would do that just for ourselves, that would be, and I find it a little bit a harsh word, but it would be selfish. If we only want to achieve liberation for ourselves and we do not care about the happiness of others, our motivation still hasn't achieved its full potential. Each and every person in our life wants, just as we want to be happy, they want to achieve happiness. Just as we want to be free of suffering, they want to be free of suffering. And so with all these sentient beings, we have connections. And so when we realize that they are all the same as we are, they all want to be happy. And we have now the good fortune that we meet these teachings, that we meet the path to liberation and to enlightenment. Then it is up to us to take on that responsibility to work not only for our own happiness, but also for the happiness of all other sentient beings. And we can only achieve that goal if we achieve full enlightenment, the state in which we have developed our full potential
was-
for wisdom and compassion.
One was Ujantimala.
So try to generate a motivation that that is what you want to achieve. And then meditate on that.
Yes, they deserve it for Oscar Wilde. They do deserve it. And he had to take the brunt of it. And they took nothing for him. They would have all been earth people.
So we're going to start with the 6th chapter on the Bodhisattva Charyavatara, which is a chapter on patience. And I thought that tonight what we can do is to really get a good sense of what are we talking about. What is patience? How does the mind of patience look like? What is the way? I mean, we won't go completely into that, but how do we develop that? What are we trying to prevent from happening in the mind? And so I would like all of you to have a really, really good understanding of that. And how we're going to do that is that I'm going to let you answer the questions. Because I think we all have some inner wisdom, right? And sometimes we cannot really recognize our inner wisdom as being wisdom. You know, we maybe think, oh, this is rubbish, and how can I know? And I have to listen to the teacher. But I think we know already a lot inside. So those online, they can, if they wanna contribute, you can put your answers in the chat. And those who are here, they can shout. Just let me see that I make sure that I can see it. Yeah. So the first question is, of course, what is patience? Right? And then we have to ask, why do we want to develop that? So I'll say a little bit about that. Or does already somebody know what patience is? Yeah. The opposite of anger.
Complete situation.
The complete blissful situation.
Not even just the beginning.
The beginning of the blissful situation. So you're saying you need, in order to develop bliss in the mind, you first need to have patience. Yeah. Yes, is all correct. Not being disturbed by disturbances. Very good. And somebody says, creating a space between stimuli and response. True. And if we talk about stimuli and response, then we are not talking about reactions, but we're talking about response, right? So you bring the mind from a mind of being reactive to a mind that has some space between the feeling and then the way we respond to that. So if we look at the definition of patience, then we say patience is the mind that is undisturbed by harm. Or if I put it simpler, we can say the mind that is undisturbed. The mind that is not reacting. So what disturbs the mind? When do we get disturbed? Self-grasping ignorance, which is about everything. When we want to have it our way and it is not our way, that is one reason to get really disturbed. When we don't know, sometimes, you know, when we don't know, we can get disturbed. When we have resistance to what is, very good. When we have resistance to what is. Right, that means that something is happening to us that we don't want. And so we start resisting, and at the same time, there is disturbance in the mind. Right? So could I say that the mind gets disturbed when something happens that we don't like? And so when something happens that we don't like, it can be that we do not get what we want. Or we get something that we don't want. Right? Everyone is nodding strongly here. Or when we experience harm, you know, experiencing harm is that we get something that we don't want. right? So somebody is hurting us, somebody is rude to us, and that can be verbal, that can be physical, then the mind gets disturbed. The mind can also get disturbed when we don't know something. Somebody said that, right? Then you can become disturbed. But I'm not sure if the not knowing is the reason why we get disturbed, or maybe the reason why we want to know something is why we get disturbed. For instance, I have the feeling that if I don't know what is going on, I lose control. And when I lose control, I become vulnerable. And when I become vulnerable, I'm so scared that somebody's going to harm me that already is disturbing me. Right? So the not knowing can be, you can feel that is the reason that I'm getting disturbed, but there are many people also who do not know and they do not get disturbed. So I think if you, for you, not knowing is a reason to get disturbed, there is something behind that. Right? It's not just not knowing. It's when I don't know, then I'm scared, I'm not in control, something unpleasant. So if we look into what is the cause, I can say it's the cause why the mind gets disturbed is when unpleasant feelings arise in the mind. Right? So when I get something that I don't like, I don't feel happy. No, I feel something very unpleasant. When I get something that I don't like, I feel very unpleasant. When the unpleasant feeling comes, we get disturbed. We believe when pleasant feelings come, we get not disturbed, you know, but I think there is also a disturbance, right? We can get very excited, we can get anxious, and it can feel kind of pleasurable, but there is also a disturbance with that. But we're not talking about that disturbance when we speak about patience. We talk about the disturbance that comes with experiencing adversity. I don't like it. This is unpleasant. Right? That disturbance that comes. So when unpleasant feelings arise in the mind, what do we do? And I think you must know that because you spoke about the dharmas with Kabir a couple of times. How do we react when something happens that we don't like? When unpleasant feelings arise, we react with anger. Before the anger, how do we call that? Agitation is before the anger, very good. And then before that? Huh? Anxiety is more in the attachment. So what I'm looking for is aversion. I don't like it, aversion. And we want to separate from it, right? So that aversion can be in a huge range, right? It starts with just aversion and I say, oh, I just don't like that. But if it is important for me, I might, and it is still happening, I might get agitated. And then the mind starts to get disturbed. Why is this happening to me? Oh, I really do not want this. And then I try to separate from that. And then I don't manage to get separated from that. Then I get more agitated, right? And then it can grow into anger. And then if it is still happening, it can even grow into hatred. And so these are all gradations of what starts as aversion. And what develops in the mind depends on many, many, many factors. Right? It can be that the external stimuli that are irritating us, that are causing a lot of unpleasant feelings to arise in our mind, if they are very, very intense, you know, when they're very, very strong, we have a strong reaction to them. But if there is a smaller negativity, a negative experience that we have, but that repeats itself many times, we also get agitated at a certain point, right? We can bear it for a while, and then we say enough, right? And then when it keeps going on, we get angry. And then when it still keeps going on, then maybe hatred starts to arise. right? So that is when external stimuli, but then there can also be internal factors that make anger or aversion develop into anger, or aversion develop into hatred, or just irritation. For instance, the way that we engage with the unpleasant feeling, or with what is happening to us. If something happens, give me an example. What is an unpleasant thing that can happen to us?
Being separated from something like
Yes, for instance,
a person.
being separated from a person that we like. And so then what happens in the mind? The mind starts to tell stories, right? And so we can, what stories do we tell to ourselves? Oh, they don't like us. Something must be wrong with me. What else?
But they're not okay. Sometimes it's about them not being okay, and then worry yourself with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And how do you worry? What does the worrying voice tell you?
Fear of losing them.
The fear of losing them. And what does that voice say? Yeah, it is a grasping.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is the story that we are telling ourselves? This can be many different stories, right? I'm not looking for one thing. But when there is disturbance in the mind, something goes on, right? We are making a story in the mind. Huh?
Yeah.
Right? And often that story is something that we repeat over and over and over again. And we're trying to find a solution that is going to help us to separate from that suffering, from that unpleasantness. But it never does, you know? So then once we have done a whole round, we're still having that unpleasant feeling. We start again. And then we repeat it over and over again, right? Do you recognize that? Or we call a friend and we tell that whole story to the friend. Right? So this is what is called mental engagement. And when there is a lot of mental engagement, and when I already have the tendency to react with anger, then something happens that is unpleasant. For instance, we are separated from somebody that we love, you know, then that mental engagement can fuel the anger. That discomfort of not having what we want fuels anger, can fuel hatred. And so what Shantideva talks about is that what is the fuel for our reactiveness is discomfort. I don't like it. Unpleasantness. And we have seen, or you have seen in the 8 worldly dharmas, right, that is one of the motivations. If we are separated from something that we need, if we are separated from something that we want, anger arises. Discomfort arises first. Then, as a reaction to that, anger arises. Right? I'm just reading the comments in the chat. This leads to insecurity in us. I think you're maybe talking about the mental engagement. If we tell stories to ourselves, you know, if we do not get what we want, if we are not successful, it can be that we start becoming insecure. But that insecurity comes from the way we speak to ourselves, right? Sometimes if we don't get what we want, we can start beating ourselves up, right? Oh, you're such a failure. Why didn't you manage? You should have done better. You're so stupid, right? It comes a whole scenario that we're telling to ourselves. Like we have this stick next to us. And as soon as something happens that is unpleasant, you know, many of us take that stick and we start beating ourselves up. And we think, if I beat myself up, then What do we think actually when we do that? Do we think we're going to become more successful next time? Yeah. So we're going to be more successful next time when I beat myself up. We think like that, right? It's totally illogical. It doesn't make any sense. When you speak it, you think, how is that possible? But that's what we think. If I beat myself up, next time I will do better. So that means that we feel like I'm to blame for what is happening to me, right? I should have done better. I should have known better. I should have watched better. I should have listened better. So I beat myself up. So we are already suffering from unpleasant feelings. And then what we do is we pick up a stick and we beat ourselves up, because then we think next time we will have less unpleasant feelings. Is that true?
Sometimes you can also.
But is it-
From beating someone else up. If I shout at them, then maybe next time they won't do it. I've seen that also happening.
Yes, yes, yes. But if we look into how we treat ourselves, because often how we treat ourselves is not how we treat others, right? We beat ourselves up for things that are not in our control, things that happen to us. And then somehow we feel that we should have done something different in order to prevent that from happening. But when we think logically, it's not true, right? You know, I did everything I could and it still happened to me. Logically, we know it was not my fault, but emotionally we blame ourselves, right? This is something that if we can address this, we become much more kind to ourselves. And when we are more kind to ourselves, we can bear much easier whatever is happening to us. So I think this is not in Shantideva, but sometimes I think this is the first thing that we need to practice. How can we put down that stick that we always use when something unpleasant happens to us? Right? So in relation to others, so now I try to address what you are saying.
Sometimes you get angry with others. Again, it's a kind of control.
Sometimes you get angry with others because you want to control them. They're not doing what you want.
They're not doing what you want.
Yes.
You get angry with them, saying, okay, if I get angry, they will do what I want.
Yes, but is that, so when I'll just say it for that. If someone says, if I get angry with another person who's not doing what I want, I become angry because I hope that that is going to make them do what I want. Yeah. But that anger that you use, is that the similar anger that you use to yourself? Or is that a different type of anger? So when you are in a situation that somebody is under your wings and you need to give them a job and they're not doing it, and you tell them what to do, you can become either very emotional and get outraged, or you are a little bit wrathful. Hey, I asked you to do that, please do that, right? Being wrathful is not anger. Wrathful in the sense of wrathful with compassion. Right? Anger is that is again a different layers of anger. There is an anger that we can do with compassion, which is, I think, as ordinary beings, extremely difficult. But we can do that like a parent for a child. You know, you want the child to be disciplined in order to protect your child, in order to help the child. If I do that with an employer, right? That can be a very positive action where you help someone to be more disciplined, to use their energy better. Then I can be angry without compassion, which is more difficult to take for the other person. And then I think it's going to be maybe less effective. And then I can become totally enraged with the other person, like, oh, I've become totally crazy, right? That maybe people laugh about us that when we do that. But the last one is much more disturbing for the mind than being angry with compassion or correcting someone with compassion, right? You see all these gradations?
A lot of this, Venerable, is also to do with the kind of expectations we set for others or for ourselves, isn't it?
A lot has to do with the expectations that we set
Yes,
for
the
others and
impatience of-
ourselves.
I mean, could it be self-patience is also the wisdom in setting yourself the right expectation?
Patience is the wisdom to set for yourself the right expectations.
And in others.
And in
Sometimes
others.
all we want is compliance rather than from others, rather than actions which are wise or skilled. All we sometimes want some from others is that they listen, that they do as you like. Sometimes when we beat ourselves up is the kind of thing that you spoke about.
Yes.
It is a long drawn process of having set yourself something which is not necessarily wise.
When we get disturbed,
Yeah.
it's not necessarily wise. I think what I agree with you that in order to develop patience, we need to develop wisdom. We need to develop understanding. We need to, and the more we do that, the more, the stronger we can make our patience, right? When we have no patience at all, that means that the disturbing emotions completely take over. And when they take over, we are not in control anymore, right? We don't really know what is going on. We are just acting emotionally, right? So yes, I agree. More understanding, more insight will help the development of patience. Yes, for sure.
They're all interlinked with each other.
They're all interlinked with each other. And when we practice the 6 perfections, from which patience is one of them, we always need to develop our wisdom as well, you know? And in patience, if we're going to really analyze patience, we can also find generosity in patience. We can also find ethics in patience. We can find any of the other perfections within patience. So with any skill that we develop, we need all these qualities coming together and then used in a very precise way, right? It's a skill to become patient. Just let me go down to the chat. Yeah. So if we look into the Tibetan, what patience means, you know, or the literal what in Tibetan, patience is zopa or zopa. Zopa. Yes. Yes. So having Lama Zopa as our teacher, he is an excellent, I mean, if you see his way of practicing patience is amazing. I think he is an embodiment of patience. But if we think about patience, then patience has, or zopa has different connotations. So one connotation is that it means forbearance. Forbearance means that you can endure something. You can endure hardships, right? When we have no patience and we have a little bit of harm, we start screaming, too much, can't take it, right? But if we develop our patience, then that means that we first in the beginning, we have a little bit of some kind of harm and we say, okay, you know, what's the problem? It's just a little bit of my arm that got bitten by a mosquito. Why would I scream about that? I can take that. And then we can maybe not only have 1 mosquito in the room, maybe we can bear 5 mosquitoes in the room, you know, more difficult. Mind gets a bit disturbed. But maybe we can say, okay, you 5 can eat my body. That's okay. You can only take a little bit. Enough will be left for me tomorrow to wake up. So you just take it. And so we can train the mind in bearing hardships, right? It is not that, it is that some people are more sensitive than other people. But I think everybody, we all have a mind that is, due to its nature, we can get used to anything. And so when we, some people, they cannot bear the heat. And so when they go to a climate where it is more hot in the beginning, it is very, very difficult to go outside. And maybe you have to stay more inside with your air conditioning. But then if you want to train your body and your mind to be able to bear the heat, you can go every day 5 minutes longer outside. You can turn the air con not that high so that it, inside it's a little bit hotter. And then slowly you get used to the heat. Same we can do with cold.
But why must one do this? Why must you train yourself to be outside of what's comfortable for you?
That's a good question. So the question is, why do we need to train ourselves to with something that is not comfortable to us? Yes. Very good question. First, we need to really understand that the mind is trainable, right? That the mind is not fixed. Whatever qualities that we are having, it is not, we don't have them forever. These qualities are actually constantly changing, right? If you are born with qualities of having compassion and loving kindness a lot, but you are born in a family where you are abused all the time, for sure, most likely you might lose all these, not all these qualities, but part of these qualities, because you get so often angry due to the abuse that you experience, right? So in that way, the mind changes. But in the opposite, we can also change the mind. When you have a very disturbed mind, you have a tendency to react very, very strongly, then you can train the mind in slowly learning to bear more discomfort. Why do we want to train the mind in bearing more discomfort? And I'm not saying, that you have to train your mind in whatever discomfort. I'm not saying that. Right? What is the merit of training yourself in getting used to the heat? Right? I mean, we're not talking about that. What I want to train my mind is in how can I bear irritating people? How can I be with people that normally agitate me so that my mind does not get disturbed? What would be the benefit of that?
Keeping ourselves in a high patience in the most difficult situation.
Keeping ourselves in patience in the most difficult situation, but what is the benefit from that?
In patience, developing patience.
And but what is why?
Train our mind.
Train our mind, but what is the benefit of that? You will feel better when you develop patience. What other benefit do we have? We will be happier because we are less agitated. That's true. Nirvana is coming. And then people around us will be happier, because when we are agitated, we're also agitating people around us, right? And someone says we remain more peaceful. That's true. The mind stays more peaceful. When the mind is more peaceful, then more clear. More clear, we can use our reasoning consciousness or logic better when there are not so many disturbing emotions. We have more time to see what is going on and how to respond in a skillful way instead of reacting emotionally. Right? So we can contribute for the whole, for the better of the whole, when the mind is less disturbed by discomfort. Right? When difficult situations arise, we're not in control of what is happening in our life, right? We don't know what is happening. We might walk outside, something is happening that is really disturbing. If you have trained your mind in being patient in difficult situations, you will be able to keep your mind much more stable in whatever situations that you encounter. When your mind is more stable, you will be of greater help to everyone that is around you, right? You will be less affected. When we become easily very emotional, the mind gets disturbed. And that disturbance is not just in the moment that we experience that unpleasantness, right? We walk away from the situation and it is still in the mind. And if we have a lot of mental engagement, we might for days be endless spirals going on. Yes, overthinking. Right? This is one of the main things that we are suffering from, that overthinking. So when we can get to the mind to not be disturbed by harm, then we encounter a difficult situation, the mind is calm, we help where we can, we go home, then we go to sleep, and next morning everything is fine. Right? Is that helpful? So we can do that. We have the capacity to do so, all of us. Right? It's just, so that is what Shantideva is going to tell us. Let me see where we are. So what Shantideva starts with in the text is he's explaining the 3 characteristics of patience. And so the first characteristic is patience based on conscious acceptance of pain and hardships. So when we experience pain, when we experience hardships, then to find a way to, and what we mainly do is we find a way of thinking that helps the mind to be less disturbed or undisturbed, right? When unpleasant feelings arise, there is always mental engagement, there is always overthinking that triggers, even that is the fuel of our agitation, it is the fuel of our anger. So when we change the thinking, right, then we create a condition that anger cannot arise, not in such a manner as without applying the right antidotes. Pain and hardships, and you can imagine that when you experience pain, you know, and I mean, you can start talking about, I have a little cut. Some people already go hysteric when they have a little cut. But there are also people who experience day and night pain in their body, right? And so when you have a lot of pain, the mind easily gets agitated, right? Because when there is pain in the mind, there is aversion. And if it happens again and again and again and again, every moment there is aversion the whole time, and that is what is fueling your agitation, and from there your anger. And so then it can be that when you experience pain in your body all the time, just a little thing has to happen outside, anger comes, right? So how do I deal with pain? How do I deal with hardships? How do I how do I find a mindset that helps me to endure whatever is happening without becoming reactive? Right, so he's speaking about that in the verses 12 till 21. So that is the first patience that we develop. And he calls it is also sometimes called the patience for life. So if we look into life, then we can say that, you know, whatever we experience in life, there is always discomfort, right? It's part of the package. Sometimes we think that life needs to be, I go from a good experience to the next good experience, to the next good experience, to the next good experience. Or I experience some discomfort, let's do something nice. Let's distract ourselves. Let's go and have a coffee. Let's do whatever, you know, to make, we have this feeling we're always hunting for good experiences. True? Always, right? It's like if we have unpleasant experiences and we cannot address them or we cannot distract ourselves from them, it's almost unbearable. What do I do with that? Right? And the lifestyle that we're having, we do not, I don't know if you learned that, but I never learned how to be with unpleasant feelings. Do you know how to do that? We only learn how to run away from unpleasant feelings, right? And so if we look into the nature of reality, our samsara, then everything that we are doing, all the pleasant things that we are doing, comes with a kind of a discomfort as well. Right? For instance, you have a fantastic job, but there is this one person who's so, you don't like him or her, disturbing you all the time. This fantastic, if she would just not be there, everything will be perfect, right? Or I go, you know, I have found this perfect coffee place. I don't know why I'm talking about coffee, but I found this perfect coffee place. And so you order coffee, you're waiting for the coffee, and then you get it. So we had this yesterday. He said, you drink it here? Yes, we drink it here. And it comes with these takeaway cups. And I think, why should I drink a takeaway cup when I'm sitting here, you know? So agitation comes to the mind because it's not completely perfect, right? And that it comes a little bit with what you said, that we expect things. We want things in a certain way, and then they don't happen. Oh, agitation is right there. So discomfort is part of life, right? If you meet the ideal partner, right? 6 months, 8 months, you are totally in heaven. You think, wow, this is it, this is it. And then after that time, suddenly you think, what did he do there? Was she always like this? You know, and you see things and you think, oh, I really don't like that, right? There is always something that we do not like. Even if we have the best of the best of the best and we have consumed it, and then we think, we can think something was still missing. If it if this would have been there, then it would have been completely perfect, right? Or we have consumed something really, really pleasant, and then soon after the feeling comes, I want to do this again, right? The satisfaction is there. I want to do it again. So that discomfort of dissatisfaction is there. That discomfort of something is missing is there. And these are just the small discomforts, right? Then we also have the discomfort that unpleasant things happen to us. They're part of life, right? The Buddha said in the First Noble Truth, life is in the nature of suffering. And if we look on the course level, we have the suffering of birth, sickness, aging, and death. Right? It's in all lives. If we are lucky, we will experience them all in life. It's there, right? And there are people who maybe never get sick, but everyone one day has to die. We all will experience that kind of suffering. So if we know how to be with suffering, the mind will be much more peaceful in whatever we experience, whatever life throws at us. Right? Being with suffering. It's a fantastic skill to learn. So it is not that we have to look for, I see some objection. So we do not have to look for suffering. And if we are in a situation where we suffer and we can walk away from that, please walk away from that. Don't think, oh, I have to be here because I need to learn patience, right? If you feel like I cannot bear it here, I have to go, please go. Don't go against that feeling. But if you have developed some skill and you are in a situation that causes you suffering, and you feel that your presence could be of benefit to another person and you are happy to give that, then is the time that you can stay. Right? But at the moment we are running away for any unpleasantness that we experience. And actually what Shantideva is saying, if we know how to be with that adversity, we do not have this urge anymore that we have to run away. And so then when we don't have the urge to run away, there is a choice. Then we can decide, do I going to stay or do I going to go? Is this unhealthy for me to be here? Please go, right? Never stay. But if I can handle this, being here in this difficult situation, and I can help somebody by being here, I maybe can voluntarily take that hardship upon myself and stay. Right? We will all come in situations that we have no control about. For instance, the hardship of experiencing hunger. When we are hungry and there is nothing to eat, how long can we last without the mind getting totally disturbed? Right? But if you habituate the mind to, for instance, doing some fasting, right, on a regular basis, and you know that you can sustain yourself easily, at a certain point it becomes like that, right? You can sustain yourself easily for 12 hours or without any food. Then when there is no food at this moment, I do not have to get disturbed. I know how to handle this. I know my body can take it. Right? Do you see the benefits of that? I see a very short, yes, okay, but. Huh? We will be less agitated, right? When we know how to handle this, there is less agitation. That doesn't mean that.
And then we can probably do the right thing. Be sharper.
We are sharper, we are more clear in the mind. Yes.
Something needs to be done, but like you said, we come out of the emotions.
Exactly, exactly. By being able to take that adversity, we become less emotional, less reactive. And so if we bring that back to the 8 worldly concerns, you know, the 8 worldly concern is all about I want, I need, right? And the stronger these emotions are of I want, the stronger the negative, the reactiveness is when we do not get what we want. Right? So if I'm a spoiled person who is used to getting what I want, you know, mommy, daddy, I want this, and mommy and daddy are giving it to me, I will have no tool with me when something unpleasant happens to me. No tool. So it is not the problem that you get everything, but it is the problem that you do not know how to work with yourself when things are not there. Right? And we're not always in control over what is here and or what we have and what we don't have. Right? So becoming less reactive means having more space in the mind, being more peaceful, being more clear, being more skillful. You know, there's only good things coming from that. Someone says this session is really great. Thank you. And very practical for our daily life. So the recordings will be available on YouTube, right? Yes, yes. Being able to stay hungry is like a freedom. Yeah, this is actually exactly what we're talking about. Being able to stay hungry is a freedom in the sense that, you know, we have this, when hunger comes, we need to eat. And so if I do not know how to be with hunger, I need to eat right now. But when I teach myself how to be with hunger or how to fast, then I have a freedom of that attachment. I have a freedom of that reactiveness. And that freedom, that is actually what brings the real happiness to the mind. Right? If we think about what does liberation mean? Liberation is freedom from attachment. And when we have freedom from attachment, we also have freedom from aversion, right? Because the more attachment there is to something, the more aversion comes when we do not have that, right? So that freedom, that is like, you know, when we meditate on the blue sky, the mind like the blue sky with no clouds in it, that is the mind of freedom. no delusions in the mind. That is a happiness that has a totally different quality than the happiness that comes with pleasure. Right? We call when pleasure arises in the mind, we say, oh, now I'm happy. But in Buddhism, that is just pleasure. That is kind of a happiness, but not real happiness. It is not real happiness because it's unstable. It is not lasting. But if we have freedom from attachment, that happiness that arises from that, that is like, you know, lasting. That is there forever. So whatever skill we learn in being able to let go, to stay with the discomfort, you know, we get freedom.
Frankly, Venerable, just the amount of time we spend eating, my God.
The amount of time we spend eating. Well, we have to do it in order to.
Constantly thinking and preparing and eating, and then
It's amazing, no?
exit our system.
Hours and hours we are busy with eating, and then we are busy with sleeping also. Sleeping is also such a huge attachment, you know. But I'm not talking about these things, right? Hunger is just an example of how we can train the mind. But the real training we want to do with the pain and the hardships that we experience, right? And then let me go to the next one. Yeah. So that was the first, the tolerance based on accepting pain and hardships. That is the first characteristic of patience. One beautiful way of dealing with this kind of impatience, you know, when suffering arises in the mind, there are so many, if we do thought transformation, so many ways that we have to transform that painful experience into something beneficial. You know, the moment that we're going to see that there are benefits in experiencing pain or hardship, when we really can see the benefit, then when pain or hardship arises, we say, yeah, bring it on. Here it is, another opportunity for me to transform my mind. Right? When we see the benefit. And so one way of dealing with this is that we contemplate the benefits of suffering. At the moment, suffering has no benefit to us, right? That's why we call it suffering. Suffering means I don't like it, I don't want it, I want to be separated from this. But when we can see benefit, then the aversion for that suffering will automatically lessen, right? When the aversion to the suffering lessens, the suffering that we experience already is less. True? Yeah. The main problem that we have is not so much the sufferings that we experience and the discomforts that we experience, but the aversion that we have to it. That is sometimes 90% of our suffering. So when we can see, oh, you know, if I can let go of that aversion and just connect with that suffering, then it's like, oh, is that all? Oh, I had a feeling it was huge, you know, but now I feel it and it is not that big. But we make it often much bigger in our mind and we push it away and we push it away. And that is what causes, you know, that is the resistance that we build up. And that is all about what we think we're going to experience. It is not about the experience itself.
But sometimes it's like when you experience something and it hits really hard.
Yes.
It's not imagined.
Yes. No, I'm not saying that. So I'm not saying that what we experience is imagined. I'm not saying that at all. And there are extremely painful experiences, right? That we feel like I cannot take this right now and that we need to push away in order to maybe slowly take it, right? But if we want to become free of suffering, we need to be able to endure whatever is happening. If we want to be free of suffering, what we need to become free of is our reactiveness to that suffering. if we would not react to the suffering anymore. The real suffering that happens is our reaction to the suffering. Feeling in itself doesn't make the mind positive or negative. Feeling is just feeling. It is when I react with aversion to a feeling that it disturbs the mind. It is my aversion to the feeling that disturbs the mind, not the feeling itself. But the feeling can be so big that I feel like I cannot take it. And so then I generate aversion. I don't want it. The moment I generate aversion and I don't want it, then whatever I experience is what I think I will experience when I allow that feeling to arise. Right? So then it becomes a fight with ourselves. How can I let go of my resistance and allow that so painful feeling to arise? Because sometimes we can feel painful feelings. We might have the feeling, if I'm going to allow this, it's going to destroy me. I cannot allow this. I have to protect myself from that. Right? It can be that pain is so overwhelming that we cannot take it. But the only way that, then we put up this resistance, we put up this aversion. But when that is in the mind, that experience has not been fully experienced. And so we have put it on a hold, and it will always be there in the background, waiting until we are ready to actually fully experience it. Once it is fully experienced, it's gone. True. I know it's a painful truth. I've fought myself my whole life. But the moment we can give it up, so much more peace comes to the mind. Just let me look. Someone says, stay hungry is like devotional towards the God or nature. Can be like that. Practicing being able to stay hungry could be very good for some people, like me, who sees eating as a daily chore, somewhat unnecessary burden that we could have been saved from. So the hunger is just an example, right? We can use food in order to learn about, the mind that reacts to the discomfort of not having food. But the real learning about patience has to do with feeling so much suffering and finding a way to be with that suffering that we do not react with aversion. Right? When there is aversion, there is disturbance. When we want the mind that is undisturbed, when the mind is undisturbed by harm or by suffering, that means that we do not react to the harm or the suffering that we experience. Right? So somehow we need to find a way that aversion that we that we automatically feel, that we transform that we find a way of thinking that aversion does not arise. So this is what Shantideva tries to teach us. So when we know how to be with suffering, for instance, when we know how to be with pain, first of all, we generate some compassion for ourselves, right? If we know how to be with our own suffering, that means that we have compassion for ourselves. But we also learn about the suffering of others. Just as we experience certain sufferings, also others experience these sufferings. And so then automatically also the compassion for others starts to increase. When there is more compassion in the mind, we can be much better with the suffering that is there. And so then we slowly take ourselves out of that spiral that we are in right now. We turn it around. And so being with suffering can also help us to understand more the nature of suffering, right? Because at the moment, most of us, we have the feeling there is suffering and there is happiness. And these two are two different coins, maybe, two different sides of the same coin, but they're very different. And we're all striving to be with these happy feelings, you know, and that unhappiness, we do not want to be there. So if we are somehow managing to be only with this side of the coin, we're doing really well, we have the feeling. But if this one is coming too often, the other side of the coin, we think of ourselves, no, this is not good, and I should do something better, and maybe I'm not seeing something, maybe I need to improve certain skills because I need to stay at this side of the coin, right? So suffering and happiness are two different things. Pleasantness, unpleasantness are two different things. But when we start to understand the nature of suffering and the nature of samsara, the nature of our existence, then we can see that pleasant feelings and unpleasant feelings, they're both feelings, right? And what we call pleasure at the moment, how do I say that? If we really investigate pleasurable feelings, what pleasure is, you know, I'll give you an example. For instance, we're sitting here with the air conditioning, and the air conditioning at 20 degrees, and suddenly it becomes cold, right? Oh, no, it actually becomes really cold. Let's put it a little bit higher. We put the temperature on 26 degrees, and then we do that for a while. And then in the beginning we think, oh, this is really nice, you know, now it's much better. And then we think, oh, now it's getting really hot. It's really, really hot. And so then we get up and we put the air conditioning a little bit down again, and then we think, oh, this is so nice. And then after some time, oh, now it becomes a little bit cool, right? So then we need to keep changing. And so this is what we're doing our whole life. When we are sitting down, we feel like, oh, it's really nice. But when we sit too long, we feel like, oh, no, I really have to get up and do something, right? And then we do something, and then we think, oh, now I'm getting tired, I'm going to sit down. So the moment that we change from an activity or from whatever experience that we have, you know, say, for instance, from walking and sitting down. The moment I'm walking and I'm getting tired of walking and I think I need to sit down, the moment I sit down, the suffering of the walking finishes and the suffering of sitting is about to begin, right? That moment, we say that's pleasure. Then we sit for a long time, then the suffering of sitting goes up, 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 up. And then at a certain point we think, oh, I need to get up and do something, right? The moment that I get up, the suffering of sitting is finished and the suffering of walking is about to start. Then we say, that's pleasure.
Different kind of suffering turn to a pleasure.
We call it pleasure because it is the one suffering is finished and another is about to start. That moment we say that's pleasure. That is what we label as pleasure. But whatever we are doing in samsara, you know, it goes in these flows. Sometimes it feels comfortable, sometimes it feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it's comfortable, sometimes it's uncomfortable. And the better we can embrace both experiences, the better we know how to be with both experiences, the more stable we feel, the more freedom of reactiveness that we have, the happier we are, right? Then also the less disturbed we are. Fantastic, huh? Art of suffering is the art of happiness. I agree with that. And then someone says, would it be correct to say that whenever aversion arises, it is accompanied by grasping to its opposite? I think whenever aversion arises, you want to get away from what you are experiencing. And one way of getting away from it is that you distract yourself from it. And that can be that you grasp for the opposite. Someone else thinks it's amazing. Yeah, I mean, this is not coming from me, you know, this is Lama Zopa, he talks about it like that. But when you see it, it's like, oh, what are we talking about? You know, it's all same, all samsara, all coming and going. And so we think that we can manage that somehow, and we think that we can avoid certain things and have more of the other thing, but it's all same, all same. And if we can see it as all the same, we are not reactive anymore. Then being non-reactive doesn't mean we are just equanimous, you know. Being non-reactive means having freedom of reacting. Having freedom of reacting is bliss, is happiness, is real happiness. Real in the sense that the more we can be free of reactiveness, the more happiness we will experience. And that happiness that we experience is a happiness that is stable. It is not coming from causes and conditions. I stop doing something, and then actually the nature of my mind, which is that happiness, is just there. I can see it. I just remove my reactiveness. Right? That freedom. That is bliss. You know, no, not bliss, but that is happiness. Yes. All right. So we're just on the first characteristic of patience. I will mention the two other ones as well, you know. So the second characteristic of patience is that we reflect on the nature of reality, and that is discussed in verses 22nd through 34. And I think that has a lot to do with the expectations that we have. If we think about the nature of reality, and this is talking about the conventional nature of reality, everything that exists is impermanent. But due to the way our mind works, somehow we always expect things and human beings to be more permanent than they are in actuality. Logically, we know everything is impermanent. But then when something is finished, we think, oh, how is that possible? Right? We don't think, oh, of course it's finished. You know, everything is finished one day. So now this is finished. No, we think, how is that possible? Right? We grasp at more permanent. We think that things are more permanent than they are in actuality. We think that relationships are more permanent than they are in actuality. We think that human beings are more permanent than they are in actuality. Right? That is a whole different explanation to really understand, but I'm sure that you know that when you come somewhere, you know, when you are in a place for the first time, wherever that is, you have the feeling that place always was like that. Right? But if you start thinking, what was here 50 years ago? What was here 40 years ago? What was here 10 years ago? What is going to be here in 5 years? Right? Then you see, oh, a whole change has happened. With respect to ourselves, I don't know about you, but I always think, I'm going to live forever. Right? Emotionally, it feels like, yes, sorry if some people say that's really stupid, but that is like an emotional feeling like, yeah, you know, of course I'm here, you know, and I'm going to be here forever. It's like you do not observe that change that is happening every day. And you also somehow deny that reality that one day we're going to die, right? This is why it's one of the first teachings on death, because we have this tendency to somehow assume we're going to be here forever. No, is that just me having this feeling? No. We do this. It's good to observe that, right? It's like it's an emotional feeling. The Lamas, they say, if you would be really aware of your death, you would act very differently than you're doing at the moment. The way we are acting at the moment shows that we are not aware of our own death, right? We forget about it. We just live life, we forget about it. So thinking about the conventional nature of reality, that we're going to talk about that. And there's so much to say about that, you know, how things arise, independence of causes and conditions, independence on our conceptual mind, how things arise in mutual dependence. You know, I can only talk about many people in relation to few people. I can only talk about long in relation to short. Everything depends. And so dependent origination is really Buddha's teachings about the conventional nature of reality. In order to really understand that, we also need to understand the ultimate nature of reality, you know. But I think thinking about impermanence, we all can do that. We do not necessarily have to understand emptiness in order to get a feel for the impermanent nature of things. And so when we think about the conventional nature of reality, we also try to think about that one thing is not coming from one thing. We have the tendency to, you know, for instance, we're driving in a car and we get hit by somebody else. And that person is drunk, right? Then the mind goes, oh, this guy, he was drunk and that's why he hit me. And we maybe get stuck on this drunken, this guy who was drunk, the guy who was drunk, the guy who was drunk. But that's only one condition for that accident to happen, right? We can think about many conditions that were involved. For instance, how come that you didn't leave 5 minutes later your house and end up at the same time that this guy was crossing? How come that you didn't leave 5 minutes later, right? And sometimes when something big happens to you and you think back, you can see, oh, why did I just leave my house at that time? You know, what a coincidence. How did that happen? If I had left my house 5 minutes later, it all wouldn't have happened. And so you think about whatever happens to us, many causes and conditions are involved for one thing to happen to us. And what we do with our mind, we concretize that. And we try to blame it on one thing. It's that man. It's that word that he used. It's that car who did it. You know, one thing. But that one thing, if we start analyzing, it is even difficult to really find that one thing. But there are always many causes and conditions involved in whatever is happening. And the more we can see that, you know, the more we bring the mind, oh yeah, if I had left at a different point in time, that would not have happened. And if I had whatever, you know, if I had done it like this, then that also couldn't have happened. And if I had taken another road, I would not have been there. And if I had, right, there are many ifs. But somehow all these causes and conditions led to that one experience. But it is only one experience, and then other things are going to happen. And what the mind does is we focus everything on that one thing. And then we kept repeating it and holding on to that one thing. You know, and that creates a lot of disturbance in the mind. So analyzing, pulling it apart, seeing all the other aspects of it, all the other conditions that contributed to it, makes that we cannot hold on to that one thing. And that makes that we cannot focus our anger on that one thing. Right? If you see that it is not just that one thing, but there are many others, it's like, where's your anger going? Anger wants to fixate on one thing, right? He is bad and I know it. He didn't do just one bad action. He is just totally bad and I know it. That's what anger does. But if we see, oh, but actually he couldn't help it because this happened to him and this happened to him and because of that and because of that, the more we can see that, it's like, where is your anger going? Nothing, right? You cannot hold on to anything. True? Okay. So we're going to talk about that. And then the last characteristic of patience is that we develop tolerance towards injuries from others. And that is discussed in verses 34 till 63. So what, it is already 8 o'clock. I just want to say a little bit more about what patience is not, you know, because sometimes it's very difficult to fine tune where to say no and where to practice patience. You know, when it is appropriate to practice patience and when it is not. Sometimes we have the feeling, you know, people come to the Dharma, they are in an abusive situation or abusive relationship, and they think, I need to stay with my husband in order to practice patience. Right? If you are strong enough that your mind is really undisturbed, being with an abusive husband, or can also be a wife, you know, but if your mind is really strong enough to be with that person without getting disturbed, you can use it, you know, if you have achieved that level. But if this person abuses you and your mind gets every time really disturbed, and then you sit with that, and then you think about it, and then you know, and you're only working through these disturbances. I'm not sure if that is really practicing patience. And I also, you know, Shantideva doesn't say that we should stay in abusive situations, or we also should not submit ourselves to abuse, right? It is not that if somebody is abusing us that we just have to let it happen and we're not going to say anything because we are practicing patience. Practicing patience means that my mind is not disturbed when somebody does that. But if I feel like, excuse me, you know, this is not okay when you do that, and I can say that with a mind that is not disturbed by anger, right? Then that might be much more skillful than that I withdraw and think, okay, now I need to practice patience. Patience is a quality that is an active quality, right? We say, harm is there, but I'm not going to react. I'm going to stay undisturbed. I'm not going to let this affect me. Sometimes I have the feeling that patience, you learn more on your cushion than in, and then you bring that into practice. You do not learn the patience when the abuse is happening, or when the harm is happening, or when the hardships are happening. If you do not have patience, then the mind gets disturbed. Patience is not then to bring the mind back to not being disturbed. That's not patience. Patience is not getting disturbed at all, right? So I need to train that somewhere. I need to train my mind in a way so that when the hardship happens, I don't get disturbed. So the place of training is not in that difficult situation. That difficult situation is the place where I can see, do I have patience or not? It's the test, right? So patience, I think you can learn a lot on your cushion. For instance, by learning from previous situations where you have had a disturbed mind, and then think, okay, how can I think differently about this? How can I be differently with these feelings? What can I do with it? You know, to analyze that and to develop a skill in yourself, that you know what to do with your feelings that arise, that you know what to do with the aversion that might arise, that you know what to do, how to be with unpleasant feelings that arise. The better you understand that, the more patience you have. So then when you arrive in a difficult situation, you can be challenged, you know, and sometimes you might feel like, oh, you know, this is the maximum that I can have, you know, but that is the moment that you get disturbed, patience is gone. What is patience not? You know, sometimes people say, oh, no, you have to wait. You have to wait, right? You be patient, you have to wait. I don't think patience is waiting. I think patience is, you can be waiting, but you wait with an undisturbed mind. Right? Sometimes you see children and in the shop and they say, Mommy, I want to go, I want to go. And Mommy says, be patient. We have to wait, right? And the child goes like this the whole time, and you see the mind being totally disturbed, and the mind says, be patient, be patient. But the child cannot be patient, and also just waiting is not the same as being patient, right? It is very handy if we need to wait, that the mind does not get agitated, that we have a patient mind, right? So that moment of time, the mind is not disturbed, the mind is calm, you know, then we feel much happier, and we're not going home with an angry feeling. So patience is not just waiting. The first Tushita retreat that I did, no, not Tushita. The first retreat I did was at Tushita in Dharamsala, and we had some teachings from Yeshe Topten, Lama Yeshe Topten, Yeshe Topten. He was this great meditator, 30 years in the cave, and he came out to teach us. And he was going to teach us on emptiness, you know, and so, no, he was going to teach us on patience. And he comes the first time and he talks about emptiness, 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 1.5 hours, 2.5 hours. And then he said, oh, sorry, I should have talked about patience. I'll come back tomorrow and I'll teach you about patience, you know. So then he came back the next day and he talks about emptiness and emptiness, emptiness. And then he says after 1.5 hours, oh, sorry, I should have spoken about patience, you know. And you could already see that people would get agitated that he wasn't speaking about patience. And so I think he came back 3 or 4 times. And then the last time he started talking a little bit about patience. And then one lady said, I want to say, you know, I practiced really good patience recently. You know, I had this cook working for me, and I asked him to do something, and he didn't do it. And so then the next day I went to him and I repeated it, and he still didn't do it. And then the next time I went again to him and I told him again, but he didn't do it. And she said, I kept doing this for days. And then he said, that's not patience, that's lack of wisdom. You should have fired this guy. So that is also, patience is not just waiting. Patience is not just repeating, right? We need to be skillful. We need to have wisdom, what we practice in what situation, right? And that, I think that comes just with time, with study, with deepening your understanding. It is, I don't know, I'm also still learning, you know, where is the fine line that we can say, now I'm going to say no, and this is what I'm going to take, you know, this is a very fine line we need to really understand. But I'm still learning also there. So being patient means that we stand resolute against adversities. And so according to His Holiness, we really then, in order to develop that, we need to adopt an attitude that says, I'm not going to retaliate. I'm not going to do it. And that mind, which is coming from understanding, from wisdom, from maybe also compassion, that mind needs to be actively developed. It's not, I mean, we are born with some quality of patience, But to make it stronger, we need to really develop it. It's not coming from nothing. It's not coming by itself. We need to think about it, and we need to have an active attitude that says, I want to learn this. Right? If you say, why would I do this? Sitting with the discomfort, you know, I have so much opportunity in my life to distract myself and to engage in comfort and to, you know, to experience whatever pleasure I want, you know, then you're not the good candidate, I think, to develop patience. I think you know, it's maybe not your time, or it is, you need to feel that is what I need to do. I want to learn that. Right? And you also need to have a kind of conviction. I'm not going to give them back what they do to me. Right? When somebody harms us, we have this tendency that we say that we wish the other person something similar or much worse. Right? You guys getting tired? You're just sitting, oh, yeah, we do that. Yes, we do that. It's not just impatience, but that, you know, wishing somebody harm. In order to stop that mind, we have to say, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. No matter what people do to me, I'm not going to return that harm. Right? You need to be very strong in saying that. All right. Someone says, please explain this waiting point. So maybe this is, I don't know if that is in here in India like that. If you need to wait for something, you are in line, you need to wait. And then you have these children, they're getting a little bit agitated, and then mom says, you be patient, you have to wait. You say that here? You have to see, you do that? No, but people do that here. You have to wait, be patient, right? And so I don't know, I learned that being patient is that you can wait. So I had a tendency to wait, and I just wait, and I just wait, you know, then nothing happens. And I think, why do I never get a turn? You know, I'm waiting so patiently, but then I do not get a, right? So waiting and being patient, they are not the same thing. When you have to wait for something, you can wait patiently, which is a good thing because then the mind doesn't get disturbed. But if you think that waiting, having to wait is patience, that is not true. Does that make sense? Jatin? Yes, okay, good, it's clear, okay. Is that again the air conditioning, not too high or too low? Yes, we keep playing here with the air conditioning. It's getting too cold. And so now we're going to experience the pleasure of becoming warm. The suffering of heat is about to start. That's correct. All right. So next time we're going to start with going through the individual verses, and I don't think I will manage to do the whole chapter because it's extremely long, right? Mm-hmm. But we can make a good start, and I think the main thing is that we really understand in our own mind, this is what it is about. This is what I need to practice in my mind. The better we can identify in our own mind, what is patience, what is the feeling, what is the aversion, what is the agitation, what is anger, the better we can identify that, the better we can be with it in a skillful manner, you know, because sometimes anyway, that is what I think. Let's leave it like that tonight. Is that okay? Is there any urgent question? do I have to do something to unmute people?
No.
So if you have a question and you want to say the question, you can unmute yourself. Yeah, Aline, can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you, Venerable. This
Marco.
was very, there is a little bit of a
Wait.
quandary. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
So there's a little bit of a quandary in my mind. Usually, like you said, waiting isn't patience, but patience I have felt up to now, enduring, like you said, forbearance.
Yes.
I'm just taking an example of fasting or being hungry. Repeatedly makes you able to bear it much easier. It's that freedom of not being disturbed by it anymore.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I always thought when you're put like, I trek a lot. So there's a lot of discomfort in trekking, There's the hardship of climbing, there's the uncomfortable nights in the tent, cold, all that. But because of repeated going through this adversity, I have managed to not be disturbed by it so much. But
Right.
like you were saying just now, that's the wrong way of going about it. Not wrong way, but it isn't really the right way, meaning that you can develop this on the cushion so that when you do go and trek, then it doesn't disturb you, right? So
no. I think the physical the disturbances due to physical discomfort, I think you can train that physically, right?
Okay.
But I'm
then
talking about mentally.
The mental one. So that you sit on the cushion and is it, will you be doing it in the next session of what you actually sit on the cushion and do?
Yeah, we can do that. I will mention things how to do that. How to be with unpleasant feelings is already a skill. And I think next time we might talk about how to do that.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you.
You're welcome. One more, and then we're gonna finish for tonight and continue tomorrow. Unless you're all good. All good. Okay. Oh, we have one question here.
If nobody else wants to ask.
Nobody is coming. Please ask.
At the end, you said, if you really make an intention, you have to will yourself not to retaliate. So is that will based on an understanding that everyone like you is suffering? Is that why you will yourself not to retaliate? It's from compassion. You understand the other person.
Yes.
Yeah.
So why do we make the determination not to retaliate? What is the reason behind that? How do we motivate ourselves not to do that? Is that because that we understand that other people are suffering in the same way as we do? That can be one reason. But another reason is that when we retaliate, how we retaliate is always with negative actions, always with harming the other person. And if we engage in these kind of actions, we contemplate karma. And so when I retaliate and I do something back to that other person, whatever I'm doing will come back to me one day again. And when it comes back to me, I will be suffering again. And when it comes back to me, I will have obstacles to happiness, to pleasurable life. And especially when I study the Dharma, I want to have as little obstacles as possible so that I can keep progressing, right? So not retaliating, if, His Holiness says, if you want to be how does he say that? It's not a problem. So if you want to be, how does he say that? If you want to be selfish, then do it wisely. Right? If I realize that whatever I do to you is going to come back to me, the more I love you, the more love is going to come back. The more I hate you, the more hate is going to come back. Right? If I want to have the best for myself, means I also need to want to have the best for you. When I have the best in mind for both of us, we will both profit from that. If I have negative intentions towards people, the one that it comes back to most is me, right? Because you meet me one time, so I'm only negative to you one time. But that time I'm also negative towards myself. But then I meet somebody else, I'm negative to that person, that also comes back to me. And then I'm negative to another person, that also comes back to me. So that is, I'm suffering from that. If I want to develop my qualities of wisdom and compassion, I should stop harming. If I want to attain enlightenment, I need to develop patience. Without patience, it's impossible to become enlightened. Right? It's for you. There are many benefits in being patient. I can talk about that as well. Okay. All right. So then maybe we dedicate the merits. And want me to think? There was a special request to do some dedication in Tibetan, right? To sing the 2 verses that we normally do. Is okay? Okay. Maybe next time we put them up on the screen that people can join. Yeah, you have to help me with that. Okay. So thank you so much for being here, and I hope to see you all tomorrow evening, same time. Lama Sangye Drung Yune Drung Chikyan Malupa Deye San La Nge Pancho Jang Chum Sem Chogrim Poche Ma Kye Panyam Pamayan Gong Ne Gong Dro Pelwa Shu. I'm sorry, I missed the outline. I'll do that better tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you all tomorrow. Bye-bye.